Today, we are learning basketball with Ryan Girardot, the co founder and CEO of Cerebro Sports, a company invested in by Mark Cuban. Cerebro has a comprehensive database that just has all the data on basketball players you could ever want. Started tracking as early as youth basketball. It allows scouts, coaches, evaluators, anyone that can have access to this account. It allows them to see the developmental curve from the early stages of basketball development in the youth stages to up through college, up through pros. Just a really great way to kind of back up and see the full lens picture of basketball prospects, their skills at the young age, and kind of see how their development looks like over the course of their early career. And that leads to big decisions with big implications for colleges and NBA teams that start tracking these things real early on. And I'm really excited to dive into everything this company has to do. But first, how are you doing today, Ryan?
I'm great, man. Thank you again for having me on. Excited to be here today.
No doubt. I'm excited to just dive in and hear a little bit about yourself, about this company. I'd love to first start with your background, your journey. What led you to this position now, to joining Cerebro, and, your just basketball perspective?
Man, I don't think most would believe it. It's kind of crazy. I think everybody's path in this space kind of is, but I started a driveway basketball league in a small suburb at the time of Dallas, Texas, called Forney. It was kind of a country town then, and back around that time, there wasn't a whole lot to do. And so when I was in high school, again, kind of got this driveway basketball league kicked off. When I graduated high school, ended up turning it into a business. We turned it into an adult rec league, which we ran all over the state of Texas. We had at our largest, we had about 1,000 players. I ended up being acquired by a company out of Chicago, and it was an acqui-hire. So my job was to go run adult rec leagues for them at that point all over the country. And so I started to learn, man, it sure would be good if we had stats on players, because you'd have a couple of guys that both call themselves intermediate. One of them made their first basket yesterday. The other one, played college and is just looking for an easy run. And nobody ends up happy about that pairing. And I remember kind of thinking back to my ball kid days. I was a Dallas Mavericks ball kid when I was growing up, and I remember looking around at the rafters and seeing all the cameras and thinking, man, they've got everything at this level. I could never really make a difference here. And so I thought, all right, well, let me go solve this problem of stat tracking and eventually player matching in the adult recreational space, and never thought much of it until I built this app for stat tracking games. And I was piloting it at a facility in the Dallas area that's used pretty frequently for AAU tournaments. And I had a NCAA certified scout walk over to me and say, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, we're statting these games." And he's like, "Why are you wasting your time with those guys when I've got these guys over here?" And again, like, because I didn't. I mean, I played a little high school ball, but I didn't come up through the serious AAU circuits, and I didn't realize that we were not tracking in the United States. We were not tracking the stats on our top talent. And, it kind of unveils this crazy problem of these 20 million kids that are playing basketball in the US. And it's impossible, for scouts and naked eye services to go watch every player play in every game everywhere, and then evaluate them all perfectly objectively. And so I told that scout, "Hey, I think you're right." And we worked together for a couple of years before the pandemic. Went out on the road, started statting a lot of AAU tournaments, grassroots events, high school, like holiday type tournaments. Learned a ton about the space, met college coaches, met event operators, met the players, met parents, met the high school and AAU coaches, and really just started to listen and kind of learn more about where their problems are, and how the industry works, why people are aggrieved, why they have problems. And the pandemic showed up, and live events ended, or were on pause, indefinite pause. And so our thought was, maybe we should aggregate all of these box scores into one place and create a tool that makes it easy for college coaches to navigate the transfer portal, around that time, Coach John Beeline was interested in joining as an investor. He introduced us to his coaching tree, started piloting this idea for a sortable database with them. And in 2021, we got off to our start. In the first year, had about 25 colleges subscribed to a Google spreadsheet at the time, and uh, you know the rest was kind of history as kind of along that way. It gained steam. We started building out more comprehensive profiles, covering more events ourselves, aggregating everything else that exists everywhere else, putting in these unique player profiles, adding our player evaluation metrics, which we may talk about in a bit. And then Cuban, the Cuban thing happened where I reached out to him because I had actually been statting games. I statted a particular game in Las Vegas of Jaden Hardy when he was still playing at the Scholastic level. I knew that this box score for this particular event did not exist anywhere else on earth because I statted it myself. And so I reached out to Mark and I told him, "Hey, we've got data on the player that you guys drafted. This is the day after the draft, the day after they drafted Jaden Hardy. So we have data on a player that you guys drafted last night that I guarantee you the front office did not have." And he calls BS, wants to see it, passes it around the front office, and sure enough, they didn't have it. Mark said, "Make me an offer I can't refuse." And it's one of those life-changing moments for us for sure. One of many. Hopefully, we're hoping to really change the game, and I'm super excited for our chat today.
Absolutely. There's just an awesome story there. Crazy that, you had
I told
something
you. I
that
told you
the
it's
NBA
crazy.
team
Yeah,
doesn't. Yeah.
it's
I mean, it's
yeah,
it's unthinkable, but at the same time, you hit on the head of like that tracking simply isn't done across the board for every game across the country at that level. So, having something that an NBA team doesn't is obviously very valuable. And there you go. I mean, that leads to a deal with Mark Cuban, Mavs owner at the time. And man, I mean, talk about a big moment for you guys, for the company, and just to realize the value that you have been doing all along, that, that there's a real service there that can kind of grow and expand to other evaluators for other teams, and just continue to obviously collect as much data as possible. Like these teams, these evaluators want as many data points as possible. And, that kind of idea is a reason I personally have tried to really dive more into the grassroots scouting spaces, just to see these players in different contexts and different roles and earlier stages in their career, to see like maybe he's a full-time point guard here who only was a backup connector type at the next level. Where does it scale? Which of these skills like can be scaled up with usage without, as you want efficiency to
hmm
stay up and as volume goes
yeah,
up and all that. So there's just a lot of interesting aspects here. So, on the formula itself, what goes into defining the formula? What kind of led you and your team to decide for CRAM is what it's the comparable RAM is called, for where you can put all the players from one event on a single comparable scale data wise, and it makes it a lot easier to say this guy was clearly the most impactful during these 3 games against these 6 teams that all played each other. We don't have to say, we don't have to add up like 12 points here, 7 points and 8 turnovers there and try to do mental math. It's just he
yeah.
had the highest CRAM, and what goes into that.
That's exactly it. So, the backstory there is we had created this massive database of player stats, and there's this establishment in basketball of kind of like the naked eye versus the numbers. It's still a thing, right? Especially at the grassroots level, it's definitely still a thing. Um, and as we were scaling with college coaches, what we began to find is they would be arguing over what their favorite stats or their favorite combination of stats were, right? With standard counting stats. And we're like, hang on a second, that's not the point. The point here is to be able to look through millions of players very quickly and then identify the threads you want to pull out. At Cerebro, we always say, like, we are not replacing the naked eye. Our job here is to augment the naked eye. We're adding a new layer. that just helps you find names that might be interesting and then do everything you did before. You got to go scout them, you got to watch film, you got to call their coaches, everything that you were doing before, still got to do it. Deep dive on them on synergy. Cerebro is not going to give you, how many times they do this going right, going left, all of that stuff. That's all like this is just really designed to be a new layer. And again, if you're arguing over stats and you're finding yourself in the weeds before the word go, we're not off to a good start. So our thought was, hey, we need to create some player evaluation metrics that make it a lot simpler and easy to do what we're trying to do, which is effectively serve as kind of a naked eye proxy. Not perfect, but if I were to watch this game, roughly what would it look like? And nowadays, a big way that we sell our product to college teams is we'll show them their own team and we'll say, does this look to you, according to these metrics, does this look to you like the team that you just coached for 30 plus games plus an infinite number of practices? Do these look like the players that you know? And almost universally they say yes, it does. And so that's our, to date, that's been like our number one KPI on like whether or not these things are on the right track. But we always say we have a total of 7 metrics. We have our 2 overall skill scores and then 5 specific skill scores. So if the first 2 tell you how good a player was in a given competition, the next 5 will tell you specifically what it was again they were good at. And then you can kind of create unique combinations of those 5 to then create archetypes that we have too. So to answer your specific question on the CRAM, that's one of those 2 overall metrics. So the RAM is the recruiting analytics metric. It's a scale of 0 to 1,000, soft ceiling. They're at 1,000. Think of it more like, I always kind of describe it like an absolute skill score. How good was this player in this event? Not necessarily relative to competition. How good were they? Right? Like if I went into the kindergarten league and had 0 turnovers and 50 assists, that would be, I would be killing it, but that would be a really clean game. But the fact is, a lot of these leagues you end up seeing parity, and the Rams themselves will actually be lower for a league that's messier, and the skill's just not generally as good, right? The CRAM is the contextual RAM. So that is more of, if that first one was an absolute, it's how good were you compared to the competition. So a 5.5 is going to be an average player, generally in an event. And we end up providing these medals for roughly the top 20 to 30% of players. You'll see that in our platform: gold, silver, bronze. Normally gold's like a top 2 to 3% performer. I think in women's D1, it was top 1% performer this year. With more parity, there'll be less outliers, but it's almost like this concept of a standard deviation. And then those 5 skill scores, like I said, our pure scoring prowess, 3-point efficiency, around the rim, defensive statistical impact, each of those are again going to be these unique combinations of our box scores. Generally, box score, like counting stat categories, along with considerations around volume. It's normally volume and efficiency that we're looking at with those.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up as well on kind of how you decide how to categorize these stats and where the value comes in with, like, how you decide that these are the 5 skills that we are going to track. And if I had to make an assumption, it would be because maybe they're the most scalable to every level. Like, these are the things that will translate to the next level and the level after that, or at least in theory, that's part of it. And on that idea, I pulled up old data viz I made back when Cooper Flag and that all-time Mount Verd team was hosting a tournament at the Sunshine Classic. This is a Python data viz, so it's also moves here a little bit. So this is overall impact and defense using your website. It goes through each circle and kind of shows where players land on the impact scale, where the farther right they are, the better defender they are. The higher they are, the more overall impact they are. And you can see here Cooper Flagg and Derek Queen and Cam Boozer are some high profile prospects at this event. They're all kind of in the top 5, top 6 area. It was actually Donovan Freeman who popped out on that IMG team and on that team in terms of impact for this. But I think a lot of the names, like you would recognize Liam McNeely, Cameron Boozer, Cooper Flagg, but just you would recognize that they are high impact players. And then this data viz kind of shows that, they all had top 5 impact at this event, and now they're all, some of the best college and high school players in the country still. So just an example of kind of putting the numbers that are available in the spreadsheet into a data viz to try to, meet people in the middle as well, and visualize different versions. There's also one slightly similar data viz I got here for you. Same event, but on the idea of making your own archetypes. This one tries to measure offensive engines, so it helps. The goal here is we're going to scout this event, and based on what we saw and these numbers, these are the best offensive engines that we would project. They're the best at scoring and creating, the best high field decision makers, lead primary guys for a team who are, if you had to pick a guy to run your offense through, this is who you would want to do it because they can score and create. And it's guys like you might expect. Um, you know, Freeman really did well in this event, but he was off the charts. But Cooper Flagg, Elijah Crawford, Rob Wright are some of the best passers here. Cameron Boozer, they're all the farther right, the better playmakers you are. And I came away from that event thinking Cam Boozer was the best at this specific idea. That's kind of why I made this graph. I was like, man, I came to scout Flagg versus Boozer, and I really came away thinking Boozer is like a tank offensive engine. Like, he can score. He's looking to push the break, push the pace, and the numbers back it up. And the more what's cool is when you combine the eye test with the numbers and you actually see, all right, these are matching kind of what I've thought. And then something will surprise you too. That's the beauty of the numbers, is you'll find something you didn't expect. Maybe you didn't, like in this example, I didn't notice as much Donovan Freeman during the actual tournament, but then you go and check the numbers and his impact and some of the numbers are off the page. So it makes you want to go back and say, okay, what did I miss here? Because clearly he's bringing high level impact to these games. So just wanted to see any thoughts and share with you some of the data viz I made. And I have some NBA ones too I might bring up a little later, but just thoughts on like different ways to use the data and visualize the data to help decision making.
Absolutely. Data visualization is obviously even its own specialty, and hats off to you for putting together some really cool
Appreciate it.
examples. Yeah, some really cool examples of that. Um, and I think our co-founders here, my co-founders, did an amazing job of putting these metrics together. I think one thing that we always try to really clarify is that um, d- obviously, like what the point of Cerebro is to allow you to look over the course of an entire body of work. So it's not always just about one event. You want to know, okay, like I want to see this over the duration of a number of events. Our goal is to have dozens of events on prospects. I also want to know, like, what's the sample size here? If I'm looking at an EYBL season, I'm talking 20 to 30 games. If I'm looking at if I'm looking at a weekend event, I'm talking 1, 2, 3 games, and that can produce some pretty significant outliers too. But even still, those 1, 2, 3 event games or game events, they still in the totality do begin to tell you something directionally about a player. So yeah, I love the visualizations you're putting together there, especially I always emphasize framing is absolutely critical. And one of the things we're really working on now too is helping you to kind of look across the entirety of events. So it's not just the you won't necessarily just have to look at events on a per event basis anymore. Increasingly, we're moving towards new features in the platform here in just the coming weeks and months. Where you'll be able to look at better like subsections over certain dates, or select certain events or certain levels that they played at. I just want to see their youth. I just want to see that, if you're a coach in the portal, just want to see what they did youth wise. I want to see just college. I want to see a combo. So that's kind of the direction it's going.
Yeah, and that's a great point on kind of the sample size of it all, and like where at the moment, yeah, that might be one experience one weekend. But if you're able to do that 3 or 4 times, that starts to add up where now you've seen a player 10, 15 games, you have different data points that might not be combined, but those new filters might be available down the road. But just getting as many data points as possible. And like you said, like a full YBL season could be as long as a college sample size. It could be as big data wise. So why is it not viewed almost as valuable as like there that's one thing that I've taken a step back to realize is like obviously the last time you see these guys before the draft is probably in their college season. It's March Madness. It's the big stage to prove what they can do against that level of competition. But I think seeing them against their peers their age, the few, multiple seasons before that is just as valuable for fine tuning and evaluating that path where you can learn a lot about kind of everything we've hit on with a player's their current skills, and then ideally what it could look like in the future just by kind of putting all those pieces together. And it could definitely see how a filter to combine some of these events will even be a more useful tool as well, just to add it up, because otherwise you still can kind of do like for this example, I've seen Cooper Flag probably 3 or 4 times live, and now I have these different scouting reports and data viz from each individual one that I can kind of go through and see. All right, I'm confident in his defense and his at this point, and we can base the evaluation off that. But obviously, what's cool about someone like him is seeing the quick trajectory, the quick developmental curve just skyrocket, where he looks like one player great at many things in high school, and now he's like all the things I considered his flaws, like he's been great at Duke. Like it's just insane, his versatility, just as one example. And it kind of can show in your head like, okay, maybe he hasn't been this player at Duke the entire time, but the idea that he got here that fast, let alone like
Yes.
playing up a year, like that's a real developmental curve that you really wouldn't realize without looking at all of these games.
Yeah, people oftentimes will confuse historical performance for being like some form of rigid guarantee that this is who a player is going to be in the future. I mean, I think it's pretty fair to assume if they stick with it, their strengths can remain. But as for their weaknesses, ideally, and one thing that not to soapbox here, but one thing I think that they do a lot better in Europe, especially with having statistics available to them, it makes it a lot easier to recognize where those deficiencies are, and it's not really debatable. If we're tracking our performance event to event and we see that we're just not good here, that's not a bad thing. Like that's where we're going to be working, right? And yeah, we're looking forward to being hopefully a positive influence in helping more people have better visibility into where things currently stand, whatever that means.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask a little bit about kind of your team and just what it's like running a basketball scouting data company in general, the day to day, and just what goes into kind of communicating with your own team. And shout out to the Cerebro sports team. I mean, Derek Murray, PD Webb, Rob James, just to name a few, some of the guys here that they're just a lot of smart basketball minds all on one service here, and able to really put a shine on these young players. So, what's it been like just kind of organizing that and growing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big honor to work with people that truly know ball. Obviously, I didn't get I don't have a traditional background, so I think surrounding yourself with people that are clearly smarter than you in general in leadership is a really good idea. It's especially a good idea when you're moving into a space that's new to you, and knowing the players and understanding the game is table stakes for sure. So it's been amazing to just dive in with both feet and learn that world over the past, 5 to 7 years or so. I think, one of the biggest things is really knowing your place in the industry, right? Like I had alluded to earlier. Our job is not to do away with naked eye scouting, anything but. Like that is the number one misconception. Our job is to help augment that. We're serving as a starting place, as a foundational layer, as a cross reference. In the event you do have a name, you want to go deeper on it, you want to widen your options, see how many players have performed at a certain statistical threshold. That's awesome. That's exactly what we're here for. What we're not here for is saying like, hey, your decision making process should start the start, middle, and end should be here. Like, make your decision on the basis of Cerebro alone. We've never said that, and I think it's important that we not only never say that, but we explicitly say the opposite regularly. I think it's so important in this industry to really know your place and have a lot of respect for people, for the folks that are working adjacent to you, and recognize their craft and what they bring to the table as well, because ultimately, like, the entire scouting recruiting stack is really what's going to yield ultimately the best outcomes here. So have respect for those around you is my number one piece of advice, and one of our key operating principles for sure.
Yeah, and that's a great point on just analytics in general, and the way that it can kind of get viewed. Like, it, at the end of the day, it's not meant to replace your decision. It's meant to inform your decision. Like, it's supposed to
It's a
tell
tool.
you.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's a tool. It, if anything, it tells you the odds of, especially in the moment, but it really just gives you a better idea of the odds. And, the odds say you should or shouldn't run a third down passing play in this situation on the football field.
100%.
Doesn't mean you have to run it, but like, you only got about a 10% chance of it working. So it's good to know that in
That's
advance.
That's right. And to even take that a step further, or tie this back, as we start to do predictive modeling, and obviously, like, the reason Mark wanted that box score back then was because he wanted more data points for his predictive model. The way that those work, they are probabilities. That's exactly what they are, right? And when we say we're basing this probability on snapshots, we're saying that historically the number of players that the database has seen, and how that we can say with a 90%, 80%, whatever it is, chance that a player of this archetype translates from this league, D1, to this league, the NBA. Or ideally for us, we're aiming to provide that with varying degrees of certainty to every league everywhere. But when we do, it's simply based on a series of snapshots we have, and what happened historically with other players that match those that same threshold. It is not a statement against a player to say that they can't get better here. That's where your scouting has to come in, and has to say, no, actually, like, I know he's aware of these deficiencies. I know what he's been working on this summer. Um, cool. Like, that's a bet you should take 100%, right? So, I mean, there's a place for 1000%, a place for every element that has always been, still very much is needed.
Yeah, and on the idea of development, something else I was kind of wondering is what goes into the communication aspect with the players and also teams in terms of sharing this data. What actually goes on in terms of, like, what do the teams need, what services you provide? But I was just thinking, communicating to players, like, there's also the idea of a rational confidence where you want a player to
Yeah.
think they are, like, you want guys to be overconfident at what they do. And if you communicate certain things about, like, realities, they might not be as confident taking that shot if they know that they're a bad shooter. And yet at the same time, they need that confidence to kind of work on that shot, and they realize that's now a deficit that needs to be improved on. So maybe they do know that they got to get in the gym and work on the 3-point shot. But what kind of goes into the communication where you don't take away the confidence from the player to actually deliver that message?
That is that is very much a skill, right? It is
Right.
much more art than science. um, and it's certainly an area that right now we are um, still learning, right? Like, I would not say that we have all the definitive answers. What I would say is, this is where the ecosystem comes in, and where having great skill development coaches, great developmental coaches throughout the developmental process are absolutely essential. Um, I think, yeah, how you communicate this without killing confidence is definitely critical. One of the things that we're looking to get into is we'll soon be releasing a player app where players can actually see how they stack up for the first time, like objectively see the body of work, see the data, and see themselves as we're showing decision makers already. And I think one of the next things that after we launch that we would love to get into is in no way, shape, or form skill development ourselves, but instead helping to connect players even directly with skill trainers that have shown the ability to work with players like you and to translate them into wherever it is you want to go. So our goal is to provide more clarity and ownership of that journey. It is certainly not to kill confidence. There's always the possibility of unintended consequences with any advancement. Typically those aren't reasons not to do it, but they are caution flags, and they are statements that, hey, you need to figure out what the answers are there. And I think the answers remain having great people around you that know how to walk that line.
Yeah, you're gonna have like a tab on the app that is almost like a dating app for players and developmental coaches. You just start swiping until you find a 3-point specialist.
That's right. Who delivers results? That's exactly right. But again, like to me, one of the things that I would really emphasize is obviously for decades in Europe, they've had access to this data developmentally earlier. We can see what the results of that generally are. There are ways to do this, and I look forward to our system, learning and continuing to execute in the way that it has. But now with more information and potentially a unique a unique challenge.
And that's a great point where it is a proven concept that you don't have to like sell youth sports data as an idea. You just have to kind of show like it's a valuable service that, European basketball is already taking advantage of. That, take Luka Doncic probably has his numbers as a 13-year-old, able to actually see what he's good at down to efficiencies and improve his game. And to your point, generally thought of as a European style that seems to be more team basketball decision making focused in terms of their development. So you combine that like team element with more data and more hyper focus on specializing that stuff. I mean, it's no wonder it's working to kind of develop more fine-tuned all-around players.
Absolutely. It's not just stats. I mean, there's a whole it's a completely different system. I'm not here to opine on which one is better or worse. But I will stand by an absolute opinion that more information is not inherently a bad thing.
Absolutely,
I don't
absolutely.
think that's a hot take.
No doubt. I mean, especially for big decisions with millions of dollars at stakes, and even down to the collegiate level, those numbers are getting even higher. So,
Yeah.
I mean, think about for the changing landscape of the NCAA. It looks like there's now front offices essentially being built in colleges. Like all of these decision makers need as much information as possible, and before your company, I'm not sure how much of that comparable information is out there. Like you're saying, it's almost more like rankings and like Max Prep's box scores was kind of the only option, be, give or take, unless I'm missing
Yeah.
something.
I believe that that's true. And I believe that again, all those services, all those alternatives do certain things really well. And I look forward to doing a lot more of that in partnership with them, so we can all
Yeah,
kind of fill in strengths and weaknesses. You'll always need somebody to come in and rank play, put together the top 100 list, because we'll have gaps as we talked about. But uh, ranking without this data versus ranking with this data, I fundamentally believe will be, it'll be a night and day difference, ideally.
yeah. And there's the idea of like all of this data shows the immediate impact from those events. So, in my opinion, you could also have different data for projecting future impact, perhaps
Yeah,
based on some of this impact, especially if you're trying to like project a role at a different level in college or in the pros. So it depends what you're ranking, right? Like whether it's a future prospect or who's the best basketball player today at this level.
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So, are there any services that we didn't quite get to or hit on the right way? Because I mean, Cerebro seems to just cover a lot. Like it seems like there's youth basketball players, their pipeline. You're able to identify and kind of show the areas for development for prospects, to kind of show them exactly what they should focus on if they want to improve their all around skills. There's, colleges can use this data to recruit, to compare maybe in the transfer portal, even of, different players that have already proven at the college level, to find high impact college players. That could be as easy as who's the most impactful player in college right now that is not at a D1 school, and you might find your top 100 targets in the transfer portal right there, all the way up to the NBA front office. Because, like I said before, this database goes from youth to college to pro, so it doesn't have to be just one. So you're dealing with teams, helping them scout. You're dealing with college coaches, helping them evaluate and recruit. You're dealing with players, helping them develop. I mean, it's really a full scale basketball development service.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, and you're completely right. To take a step back, I'll often hear, "Man, you guys are doing so much," and it sounds that way. But at the end of the day, we're actually just pretty simply, we're a company that just focuses on going and getting box scores. It's all we've been for the past several years. That's our core intent. I think the place that can get really conflated though is the applications. And to any prospective investor watching, to you, I say that's a great thing, right? Like, we want this to be really impactful. It's going to mean it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It all of us kind of need to know at the core, like, or the core question we ask in sports is who's better, and that kind of parlays into what players are good, and parlays into recruiting and player development and all of those things. So there's gonna be a lot of different applications that manifest in different audiences for whom we have different products. So of course we've got our scope product, which is the one for the recruiter side, which has been the product that's been our core product up until now. We're excited about the player app that we're rolling out. We've started offering tools to youth event organizers and those that we work with as well. But I think the one that hasn't been alluded to yet, and we're really excited about, maybe the simplest of all, and it's the Cerebro Global Scoreboard. So we'll here in the next couple of weeks announce a new offering that will, or maybe I'm doing it right here. Announce,
Breaking
I will,
news.
yeah. We'll announce an offering that is a public version of this, where you can sort through and you can go look at just about every game in the world. Our goal is for you to be able to see everything from high school to grassroots to college to pro, international, domestic, all in one spot. And then from there, of course, we'll segue you into the appropriate user group, whatever that is. But at the end of the day, our goal is to democratize this data and really get it out there in the open. We think the reason why we do not view ourselves as a recruiting service or as a service for just the elite. A big reason why that is our goal is to go capture all of this data, validate it with integrity, and then put it into one solid location for all of us to look at collectively. And so the global scoreboard is one of the ultimate culminations of that. We're really excited about that coming out here pretty soon.
Hey, talk about easy access for all the box scores you need all in one place. I mean, that sounds very useful. And I had one other question, I guess ancillary ideas. Was there anything outside of the website, the current service, that you might branch off into a slightly different thing? Like maybe there's a Cerebro basketball tournament around the corner. Maybe they'll have their own event. Maybe you mentioned the trying to play matchmaker, perhaps with developmental coaches and players. There's a couple. Maybe there's a basketball's a big world. Where else maybe could Cerebro branch off into at all? Any ideas in bouncing around that I guess that you can possibly talk about?
Oh man, the possibilities are limitless. And if you have partnership ideas, please call our president, Danish Pradhan. He's ready to field them as we speak. Um, no, I think our goal is to kind of serve as a starting place. To be honest with you, like I said, we just want to help people find threads to pull at, and whatever that means. If it's a player developmentally, We'd love to help serve as a nexus towards you getting to where you want to get to. So there's a bunch of these things, whether it's people that can offer video services, people that can offer skill development services. There's obviously agents, there's NIL, there's a million potential applications here. And like you said, I mean, our goal is to index not just youth basketball, but to work our way all the way up to the pros. So there'll obviously be versions there too. Even great scouting services, media services, great writers. I think Swish theory articles in the future ideally are indexed over on Cerebro, and our goal is to link that traffic right back to you, take them right back to the creators that are going to have fantastic or maybe terrible opinions on players, and it's not really our place to litigate. We just want to start with simple data, and begin to connect an open and transparent ecosystem, because our fundamental belief is serving end users better, college coaches not getting fired because they find the right players understanding where they actually stack up and knowing what they need to work on, as opposed to potentially what people are just telling them telling them maybe what they want to hear. Whatever that is, we think basketball is better done in the light, and that's all we're here to do.
Yeah,
It'll mean a bunch of different things though,
that
for sure.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes the data great, is that it's cold hard facts and that you can't really argue with the data. You can make arguments based on the data, but you can't really argue the actual data, and that's what I think gets lost a little bit. Like at the end of the day, the big value that stands out to me is that hidden talent, that hidden high impact guy that wasn't seen on a casual viewing experience, but he shows up in the chart, and you know his name, you know he brought high impact, and now you can go back and flip the order of operations and be like, all right, he wasn't on my radar before, but he's clearly doing something right to show up in this winning impact that only matters if you value the stats and the formula going into it, which obviously, like, there's a track record to give it value there based on all the other great players that also show up there. So that kind of gives it a little credibility in the idea of, like, there's not just random outliers popping up. Let's at least give this guy a chance. And that's just how, like we kind of hit on, how you can find and target talent that might be a little hidden, but are producing well in these events enough to show up on the box score and in the website there. And I think that stands out to me as one of the biggest values, is just, as we've alluded to, like, not going off just eye test rankings, but also being able to work in data points that are actually comparable on one scale. And you still have to scout, you still have to watch the games, but at least you kind of know who the actual players are that are serious contenders in kind of these discussions.
That's exactly right. Over the first few years, it's been so cool to see those stories happen in real time and see people start doing that reverse engineering. We announced a partnership with Google back in the fall, where we're building predictive models together, as I've kind of hinted at a couple times here on this call. That those will soon be available in our Scope product. So you'll have the ability to do that, like for college coaches trying to lower the bar, make it a little less quantitative and more conversational. Go ask those questions like, hey, could you identify for me some players that are showing these telltale signs? But yeah, you nailed it. I mean, that's exactly what it's all about, and what we're hoping to do here. We think if we can drive positive change, the whole ecosystem will hopefully rally around what we're building. That's our hope.
Absolutely. And another great point as well, that just kind of making it accessible to people that will use it publicly, I think can really help just spread the word like wildfire, as another
That's why I'm here,
very.
man.
Hey, there it is. We're getting the word out. It's Cerebro Day here on Learning Basketball, and I thought, kind of parting thoughts. If I was going to bring up some more data viz, I can just kind of scroll through some of it. They're all going to be one or the other that I hit on before, either overall impact or scoring creator engine. This one's kind of a lot on first glance, but it's overall impact in the NBA during the a couple months into the 2022 season, and defense. This is defense versus scoring, so a couple of different iterations, but essentially it's either going to be overall impact or scoring creator, playmaker, offensive engine type. So I'll scroll through some of these, but while I'm scrolling, I wanted to kind of end it on, do you have any advice for anyone trying to break in to basketball, to scouting, to data. And, you know, if you had to sum up Cerebro in a handful of words, what would it actually be? Is it scouting? Is it data? Is it analytics? Is it eye test? Do you have to choose a side, or as you've painted very clearly here, it's a tool that kind of helps both sides here?
Yeah, exactly. No, you don't. You don't have to choose a side, and you don't have to
Yeah,
define yourself by any standard bucket. I think at our core, we're data, and then we're tools built on top of that, and we're connectors. Connecting people back over to other great tools as well. My strongest advice for someone getting into this space um, starts with persistence and understanding that there's really no way around hard work. I have not met anybody yet that hasn't done something in this space for free as a part of getting to where they're going. Maybe with the exception of a couple of high profile players that had the ability to transition, but otherwise, like that's the path. That's the path, guys. Like, yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you, but generally when you get an opportunity, there's a million others that would love to have that spot. Never forget that. Remember the privilege, as I know I do every day, the privilege I've got to work with the great people here now, and I would say just keep fighting for your spot, for your place in the space. Do great work, and that's ultimately what gets rewarded over the long run.
that's great advice. And yeah, I mean, definitely, anytime I ask that question, it generally is a different path for everyone, and there is no
It is.
exact
Yeah.
route. There is no book on how to make it, but definitely being willing to definitely work, do a little free work here and there. There's plenty of that to do on the way up, but it's just
I,
kind of paying your dues a little.
I'll clarify. I'll clarify. At Cerebro, our goal is not to not to hire you to work for free.
Yeah,
But my point there is I haven't met anybody yet that hasn't had to grind their way to the top, and normally that means doing more than whatever it is. It's normally doing more than what the next guy is willing to do.
yeah,
In general, so
yeah,
it's a lot of hard work, oftentimes underpaid. It's just
yeah.
the reality of it. But yeah, I think it's been really really cool as I've started to learn my way around basketball Twitter, and so many great content producers. There's so many talented people out there that are producing amazing stuff. You guys included there at Swish Theory. Been a big fan of these data visualizations that you've been pumping out for a long time, and the persistence is really the through line of the advice I'm giving here. Stick with it. It will be seen, and you'll land where you deserve to.
That's some great advice. I appreciate the kind words with the Swish team and these data viz. And yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Like, you got to stay persistent with it. You just got to keep putting out good work and stay talking to people and networking in the industry. I think is another big one that goes under discussed a little bit, because you
It's a
can
good
put
one.
out good work for a while, but you got to get it seen by the right people for for that part to matter.
Eventually, eventually, somebody does need to look at it. No, that's a great point. It's a relationships business. There's no doubt about it, and that's coming from a guy that's in data. So, all about relationships.
There it is. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today, Ryan. It's been a lot of fun diving into Cerebro, hearing your story. Glad I got to share some of the data viz I've been saving for this moment. 2 years of random events, but we got to share it with the head of Cerebro himself. But man, I
Really
really,
enjoyed him.
hey, no doubt. I appreciate it, man. They're a lot of fun. Like I love the data that's available. That's why it's fun to kind of create data viz like this, is because it's a little different and it's interesting, and the categories, it just works. Like it feels right. The things that are tracked feel important. The results match the eye test, and it's just a very easy, accessible, digestible database there that is just fun to play around with the numbers when you like numbers like that, like I do, and get to try to visualize it, because the whole point is to meet people where they're at. Maybe there's people who don't really care about numbers, but at the very least you can show them the numbers say this guy is off the charts. Like, this is where you want to be. Here's everybody else, and here's Cooper Flag way up there in the corner. Like it's like that. It just shows you, the value in it, just to kind of put a little bit of, sometimes people are more visual maybe than listening to it as well, and like just trying to meet people where they're at, because everyone's different. Even the evaluators that do appreciate this, they all prefer different forms of the data in the data viz. So it has to do with what message you're trying to share, what data you're trying to highlight, and who you're trying to communicate it to, because a graph for a player might look a lot different than a coach or a front office exec, depending on what they actually need from that data. So super interesting. Thanks for taking the time today, Ryan. It was a lot of fun hearing your story, and I hope we got to share Cerebro and how cool this database is with the people here on Learning Basketball. Got to follow Ryan on Twitter at RMG Builds. Follow Cerebro Sports, and thanks for taking the time today, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Yeah.
With Ryan. Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.